Hello and welcome to the podcast series Academic Adventures with Dr. Harshit Agarwal. Join us as we uncover the authentic experiences of PhD scholars, one university at a time. Listen to the audio experience of this podcast series on Spotify. Today we have with us Dr. Santwana Pati, who has completed her PhD in aerospace engineering from the University of Tokyo. She has been a scholar throughout. So she had completed her master's from Academy of Scientific and Innovative Research in India on GET Fellowship. And then she got a MHRD and MEXT Scholarship to pursue her PhD from Japan. So we'll hear a lot about her journey and how she transitioned from India to Japan, then now to Germany. And we'll get to know about her learnings from her experiences in Japan and now in Germany. Welcome, Santana, and thank you for taking the time out. How are you?
Hi, Harshit. I'm good. I'm pretty good. And thank you so much for this podcast. And I really think the way you have tailored this podcast and the questions and the topics that you are addressing is going to help a lot of students in India as well as abroad. I'm glad to
Thank
be a
you.
part of it.
Thank you. So, would you mind telling us a bit about your career journey? What intrigued you from India to going into Japan, and then I think back to India, and you were working back in India, and then now in Germany. So, could you tell us about your career journey?
Sure. So I have been in research for almost a decade now, but I'll start from the beginning. My interest in research began from my schooling days, where I was more inclined towards mathematics and physics. So I chose a career in STEM. And even during my BTech, I was inclined towards solving the Kirchhoff's law equations and questions during my advanced electrical classes. So after that, after my BTech, which necessarily I think 90% of the students opt for after 12th, so after that, I joined the company that I was chosen through the campus selection. It's L&T. But within a few months, I thought that I have to do my master's. So I went to do my MTech from Academy of Scientific and Industrial Research. So there I did my MTech thesis in a national lab called National Physical Laboratory, which is based in Delhi. So that exposed me to scientists and researchers in India. So I did my MTech thesis, I did my project, and there I published my first paper and my first book chapter also. So that was the first exposure I got during my master's. And after that, I got mentors like my MTech supervisor. He helped me a lot in the research world because during BTech, we don't get exposure to what is actually research. And after that, I applied for a few fellowships. Then I got into MEXT, which is the Mombukasho Fellowship for Japan, that is their Ministry of Education, and also MHRD Fellowship. And I went to Tokyo and I did my doctoral degree at the University of Tokyo. So that gave me a ton of amazing experience. I traveled a lot of countries, I met amazing people there, and being a part of an international university changes not only your education system, but also your personal development is blissfully added onto it. And currently, I am in Germany. I'm working as a research scientist in the Federal Armed Forces of Germany. And my project, I work with giants like Mercedes, BMW, and the Fraunhofer Institutes. So I work with people from whom I learn something new every day. So this is the best experience in research that I could have hoped for.
Amazing, amazing. Sounds very interesting. And since coming also come from like similar research backgrounds, I can completely relate to how you must have feel and like that learning is a constant part of your life, which is very important because this
Yes.
world is changing at a amazing pace. So it's very important to be up on like and keep learning on things. So that's amazing. And then, as you mentioned a bit about your interest in research, but then what motivated you to do a PhD and that too from like a foreign country, right? Because PhD itself is like a very big commitment in terms of time and effort. So what motivated you to pursue your PhD in the first place?
I won't say I have a particular event in mind that is motivation, but from the beginning, my parents were constantly telling me to do higher education. Especially my father, even today, he talks to me and asks, so what is going on with your research? What is the new material you're making? So I would say their interest in my higher education was a big factor of motivation. And to that perspective, every middle class family in India, if their parents are highly motivated, their kids are motivated to achieve something bigger than the normal town offers them. And for my research topic, I would say my exposure to CSIR was a very big factor. CSIR is a research giant in India, and not many people know this, but they don't do mainly education, but they do industrial research. So there, it opened my eyes towards research, and CSIR even helped me pick out my research topic because I was excited to work with aeroplane structures, and the National Physical Laboratory has helped in making Agni 5 missiles parts. So that was a very big factor. I was excited to see those things. And I have
Amazing.
been brought, yeah, and I have been brought up with parents. My father was in Indian Air Force. So I have grown up watching planes. So it was very exciting for me that, okay, something that goes into atmosphere is made on the earth by people like us. So I think that's what motivated me. And I had no experience of that when I was a kid, that how composite structures are made. But I think the exposure and talking to people, talking to scientists, and going through various conferences, that helped me a lot to choose the particular research topic. And that motivated me to do PhD on that topic.
Great. And then, since you mentioned about your interest in Air Force and like because you come from that background, and then so was it like aeroplanes always fascinated you since childhood, or was it more like something that you learned when you were in NPL and like gradually started to develop more interest in aerospace and aeroplane structures or like the composite material that it is made up of?
Aeroplanes fascinated me, as in I want to sit in one and fly. But they were never fascinated me at the in the childhood that I want to build one, because
Okay,
honestly we never get that opportunity, because I never saw in my BTech there was no branch as aerospace engineering in my college. So I was fascinated by aeroplanes, but I was never excited by them to build one. That happened when I started my higher education.
great. And then, would you mind telling us about the application process for a
Yes.
PhD? Because I think every university and every country has a slightly different process. So would you mind telling a bit more in detail, like, how you reach out to your professors, how whether you have to submit something like say a research proposal or something to them the first place, and we will then obviously talk about your MHRD and MEXT scholarship because many people would like to know in detail like what it actually entails. So, but let's just start with the university application process, please.
Yeah, I think this is the most interesting and the most asked about question to me. I get this question a lot on social media, on LinkedIn, as well as my extended family members, because something called a fellowship is very exciting, especially because when we do our PhD, we are mostly nearly 24, 25, and we all want to earn money as a stipend as well. We have our personal life. And apart from that, going into an international university, that is, I think, essential for every Indian researcher, and they should aim for that, because Indian universities are pretty good, and I must say now they are giving very good experience. But an international university gives you the exposure that cannot be offered at this stage in India. I think you will also agree with me. You yourself have a degree from the international university. So what I have done is I have made some points. So I always go by bullet points. I feel any technical answer is based on bullet points. So first thing is seek acceptance. So when you are going to do PhD, do not choose the university, rather choose the professor or the research group, because sometimes there is a very good research group but they are not in a top 10 university, or like in your country university. So it depends not only on the country but the professor, where the professor is and where that research group is. So I think that is a very important factor. So what I did was I had to reach out to my professor, and in that process, my master supervisor, Dr. Singh from NPL, and Dr. Dhakate, they helped me a lot, because the scientists in India, they have international exposure. Everybody, almost all of them have postdocs from abroad, and they have done PhDs abroad also. So they have their own networks. So they helped me choose professors and write to them, I write a mail that I want to do PhD under in your research group. So that was a big help. Second thing is try to get a fellowship, because financial independence is something of vital importance in PhD. PhD is going to be a lengthy affair and quite unpredictable. You never know how many years it will take. So what I did was I applied for two fellowships. First is MEXT Fellowship. It's by the government of Japan. And the second is the Commonwealth Fellowship. It is for the Commonwealth nations of UK. And I got acceptance from UCLA and from UTokyo. But in UCLA, the Commonwealth Fellowship was in the Department of Chemistry, and it was more into the materials. And UTokyo was in Department of Aeronautics and Astronautics, and it was to build a structure using materials. So I thought the second one will be more into my alignment. It will be application of the materials. So that is how you apply for the fellowships. Now, the third part is whenever you go to do something, you have to have anchors in India. So even if you want to choose a fellowship, it's better to have your own alumni network, your own seniors, because I had a ton of seniors who have done higher education abroad. So it really helped me. What is the process? Which kind of scorecard is required? What kind of interviews are there? So I had a good alumni network. So I had contact through them. I think that is a very big factor, and that is how this podcast will help answer those questions for anyone. And the final one is, it's not essential, but I would say it's a very important thing. Choose the university correctly. Check out its ranking, check out its campus selection. What is the alumni doing currently? And somehow, I would say in top universities, you can also check out notable alumni, because most of the big universities, sometimes they boast they have prime ministers of that country from that university. That's a very big factor. When you go out, you say I'm from that university, that will really really help your career. So these 4 points are very very important when you apply for a PhD degree.
Great. And thank you for putting it to structure because, it will help. Okay, do level one, step one, then step two and three and four, right? And then you mentioned that it's important to choose a good research group. And then you did mention like it's also important to choose a good university. So
Yes.
what if a very good research group is not present in a very good university, which you have highlighted, like say if it's not in the top 10, but then whether you should like take say go with the good research group or go with the good university? If you have an option, what would you choose?
So when I gave the bullet points, I mentioned I have serial numbered them according to priority. The last one
Okay.
is, of course, the university. But sometimes, like I would say 80% of the time, good research groups are in very good universities because they get a very good fundings. But even if it's not, it will be in the tier two, like it will still be in the
Right.
top 100 of the world. So that is also okay. But prioritize the professor, prioritize the research group, not the university.
University.
Because I have an experience that most of the time, if you choose a young supervisor, like a young professor, they are not in the top universities at the beginning of their career. So even
Mhm.
if they are associate professors, but they are at a medium university, that will really help you out.
Great advice there. I would like 100% agree with that. And then, since you did your PhD from Japan, which would obviously be a completely different language and culture sphere as compared to India, so how did you prepare yourself for that? And you also mentioned about some what are the exam codes or what are the scorecards needed. So, would you like to show a bit more light on those, like for especially for if someone wants to do a PhD from Japan? So what are the different kind of standardized tests that they have to pass?
Okay, so Japan necessarily doesn't accept the scorecards like GRE, TOEFL, or even IELTS.
Okay.
These are the ones, yes, they don't accept it. So what I did was I applied for the fellowship, but with that fellowship, I could only go to Japan. I could not take the admission. So for that admission, I had to give another entrance examination of that particular university. So I went to Japan in April, and in September, I had to give the entrance exam. So that is based on mathematics, graduation-based mathematics, aptitude, and also a TOEFL, but that is conducted by the university. So they won't accept a scorecard from outside. So they will do their own test, but that is being conducted by TOEFL, but you cannot give it anywhere in the world. You have to give it at the university. So this is, I think, the case for the top universities in Japan. They conduct their own examinations. And for language barrier, Japan at that time was 11th ranking around the world, that university. So they had all their courses in English. So it was an internationally recognized university. It is still. So language was not a barrier at that time. But after I took my admission, I started a Japanese language course because I really wanted to integrate myself with the Japanese people. I love their culture, of course.
Yeah.
So currently I am in level proficiency in Japanese language as well. Like I can read and write and talk, but I am not proficient in all the kanjis because their alphabets are like so many alphabets. So I'm not good at that. And I left Japan after my doctorate also. But yeah, I can manage with the language.
Nice. And you did mention about the Japanese culture, and we all are always fascinated with it. So, would you like sharing some of your experiences of living in Japan?
Yeah, before I went to Japan, I would mention this process that maybe when we discuss about MEXT in detail,
Yeah, yeah,
but I didn't know anything about Japan apart from the fact that yes, cherry blossoms are beautiful in Japan. And I
yeah,
did, I think, a social science project in my eighth standard about Japan. So I knew
yeah.
about the earthquakes. Japan is frequented by earthquakes. Apart from these 2 points, I had no idea about it. I didn't know about the detailed history of Japan. But after going there, after meeting the people, I was fascinated by that country because, and during my course of PhD, I traveled to other countries also. And it opened my eyes that Japan is like none other. Earlier, I used to think that India's culture is intact and very good, and there's nothing like India. But I think I beg to differ. Japanese people have put on their culture even today. Even if somebody has a PhD in Japan, they will be as humble and as kind, and you will never know that they are so highly educated. And it's a beautiful feeling. People make you feel welcome in that country, and they never do stereotyping that, oh, she's from
Mm.
India, she something like that. Nothing. So that is the most beautiful experience of Japan. And I think the only reason, the big reason I had to leave Japan was I'm a vegetarian, and for vegetarians, Japanese cuisine is not so friendly if compared with availability. Yes. So by
And
convenience,
affordability, maybe.
yes.
And affordability, maybe. Availability as well as
Yes,
affordability.
I would say availability is a bigger task because
Okay.
there was no vegan food available at that time.
So
Yes.
you have to
Now
cook
I
all
think
by
it
yourself.
has changed. Yes, I had to cook all the time.
Okay. Nice. So you were mentioning about the Japanese culture and like they are very open and welcoming, right? So let's take maybe a step back and understand more on the scholarships, as you mentioned, like what MEXT scholarship is all about, and
Yes.
like how to apply. Is there a timeline for it? And since you mentioned briefly that during your masters you had a paper and a book chapter under your name, are research publications actually important to get some fellowships like MEXT or MHRD?
So first I'll tell about MEXT, and
Hmm.
as always I have prepared 5 major points. First
Sure.
point is MEXT fellowship is something that provides full coverage of all university expenses. So I never paid even single yen to the university. They covered everything from start to the bottom. Second is you get a monthly stipend. At that time it was around 1.5 lakhs yen per month, and it is pretty comfortable, much more than comfortable, I would say. Third thing is you get a flight ticket in a very good airline called Japan Airlines, and you get to and fro from India and to India after you complete your PhD. And fourth thing is there is no contract. So even if you go there, you study with their government's money, there is no obligation that you have to serve that country. So this is just a beautiful relationship between Japan and the other countries. So that's what they give. And fifth thing is MEXT provides a very strong alumni network. So there are tons of MEXT scholars who are in the various parts of the world right now. And you have a very strong alumni, global alumni, I would say, that will help your career.
So talking about again the application process, is it like just apply on their website, or there's a set form and just fill it out and that's it? Or are there like you have to get endorsements or get acceptance from university in uh, Japan before you can apply for a scholarship or anything? So if you can provide a bit more detail on those application process.
Yes. So MEXT Fellowship, I got to know through the embassy. The Embassy of Japan advertises about this fellowship called MEXT Fellowship. So first, what I had to do was seek acceptance and get a professor research group that is accepting you. So as I mentioned before, I had applied to UCLA and UTokyo. So I chose UTokyo, and then I went to the fellowship part after getting the professor. So for fellowship, next I applied in the year 2015, right after my master's. So it was a very, very lengthy process. And I hear that even today, the process is a bit simplified, but the steps are that many itself. So if you
Okay.
want to join in 2016 and start your PhD, you have to apply in 2015 because the whole process will take more than 9 months. So you get a professor, then first I had to do was apply through MHRD. So I had to give a exam, and there was also one exam for English. And then after getting selected for that, I had to go for a technical interview, which was at the MHRD in New Delhi. And there they have a panel of top academicians of IITs in the panel, and they ask you questions about your research topic. What are you going to do when you go for PhD? And then when you are selected after that process, then Government of India hands over 10 selected candidates to the Government of Japan. So after that, I had the first interview at the Embassy of Japan. It was an HR based interview by the scientific attaché of the embassy. And he asked me questions about why did you choose Japan? Why did you choose Tokyo? And how do you think the research in Tokyo will help your career? Then after passing that interview, after 15 days, there was another interview, and there they asked about the technical questions, like what will be your method for this research topic and all those things. So it's a very, I would say, lengthy process. So by February, I got the acceptance that yes, you have to join the fellowship in April. So that was the whole process for MEXT. It's very, very lengthy. And even today, I think you have to apply through the embassy. But in my time, it was MHRD and MEXT. So I applied through MHRD and then I got MEXT. So it was both the country's ministry.
So are there any strings attached to the MHRD as well? Like after completing your MEXT scholarship, you have to come back and serve India or anything like that? Or it's like all no contractual?
No, the full fellowship does not have any kind of contractual obligation. But I joined my job because I got a job in NPL as a scientist.
Yeah,
So I was in the third year of my PhD, and after that I came back and I joined the job in New Delhi. But there was no contractual obligation as to you
you
have to
have to come
join
back.
a job in. Yes, there's nothing like that because most of my friends, they stayed back in Tokyo. I
Okay.
was the first time to come back to India. Yes.
Okay. Nice. So, like in terms of your like PhD journey, how long was it? Like 3 years, 4 years? You mentioned like you came back after 3 years. So, is it in Japan that you finish your PhD in 3 years, or it can like linger for longer? And how is it? How's the time frame in Japan?
Yes, sure. So I was in the university for 3.5 years, but my PhD was exactly 3 years. And the average PhD is almost 5 years. Like the fellowship is for 3.5 years. So mostly people try to do it within it. But it depends on the topic. Like applied physics, it's very difficult to wrap up in 3 years. So it depends on the engineering discipline you are in. But 3 years is, I would say, the bare minimum.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. And then talking about your PhD journey, what would you say was the most trickiest or the most challenging part of your entire PhD journey?
Yes. So this also I would have 3 bullet points, because I know PhD journey is not something mentally very good and a very pleasant journey for everyone. But I would say I also had blank days. And the biggest challenge I faced was, some days we have this feeling that what we are doing, is it really worthy of a PhD? Because for us, PhD was a very, very big thing until you get it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there were days when I felt that syndrome, that maybe it's not enough. Maybe what I'm doing is not good. Something like that. So I have 3 key points. First is, if you are doing a PhD with like a supervisor, I would say a very good and smooth relationship between the research student and the supervisor is essential. So what I had was, every alternate Mondays, I had a meeting with my professor, and I would show my research, present it on a slide. So he will tell me if I am on the right direction or if it is wrong direction. And that really helped me. And I have seen people don't have that with their professors, and that gives a lot of burden for the student, because they don't know what to do next. And the
Right.
next time you meet a professor, it will be 3, 4 months.
Mm-hmm.
So I think good professor and student relationship is very, very important. And the second point is to make short goals. Don't make a goal on day one that I'm going to do my PhD with 10 papers, 5 conferences, that's it. I would not recommend that. My recommendation is go for short goals. Like I used to do this, that in August, I have a conference. So I choose the topic in January or February, and I write the abstract, I do some experiments, and I write the results. So from February to July, I am done with that goal. And that
Mm-hmm.
is a chapter of my thesis, something
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that. So short goals help a lot. And third one is not, I would say, formal tip, but I would highly recommend it, especially for Indians moving abroad. Always be independent. Know how to cook, know how to do your household chores, know how to build a very good social life, your own friend circle, and enjoy the life there. That will give a positive boost in your PhD. And in India, generally, we kids, when we are students, our parents don't let us learn the basic important qualities like cooking, like doing your taxes, like doing something like this. So these are essential skills, I would say, that will really help us. So these 3 points, first is have a very good relationship with your professor, be open, be frank, have regular meetings. Second is make short goals for yourself, and third is be independent and have a very good social life. That really helps.
These are like
I
really,
hope
really,
this will
really
help someone.
very important points, and I can completely relate to each of those 3 points. So, like, very well put and very succinct, right? So, it's really important. But then tell me, especially in some, if you are like working with a very big professor, he might be very busy, right? So, how would you get to know beforehand whether your professor, supervisor believes in this, like every fortnightly cadence of meeting with their research students, or what their working culture is? So how would you know that beforehand?
So that's what is the secure acceptance step in a PhD journey. So I said, look out for professors and research groups rather than universities. I was very lucky because my master supervisor and my doctorate supervisor, they are both very, very, I would say, young achievers. So they were very, very young when they got their PhD and when they got their job. And so that really helped me. And I think I went for that. I will never go for professors. I'll always go for associate professors, because professors are at a level they have achieved everything already. That's why they are professors.
Yes, yes.
Associate and assistant professors, they have to work their level up to be a professor. So they will need papers, they will need research, they will need projects. So they will work day and night with their team to achieve them. So that is a very big criteria when you choose. Of course, professor will have a ton of network. You'll easily get a job. But I think associate professors have this other advantage. They will work with you, but not the professors.
So essentially, if you work with associate professor, and obviously there would be exceptions everywhere, but in general, if
Yes,
you're
of
working
course.
with an associate professor, then maybe your overall learning is more because then
Yes.
like the kind of interactions you are having with your supervisor is much more like more detailed and more in depth and more regular, which make all sense. And then talking about, like when you were approaching your professor, how did you actually show to them that you are actually like, genuinely passionate about this particular study and you want to study this for entire, having a whole methodology and what you are thinking from, because obviously once you get into your PhD, you will get a number of other new ideas that you have to explore. And eventually, maybe what you started with the thought may not be where you end up in your PhD, right? But then how did you first off like made an impression or suggested that okay, I'm like show your genuine passion in what you want to pursue for your PhD?
So when I pursued my PhD professor, I wrote that I want to work on self-healing materials. Like
Okay.
if there is an aeroplane moving on air and suppose there is a damage and the structure is broken, then it will heal itself. So obviously I didn't work on that and it was very futuristic, but they will never see what you propose and if it will work. They will always see what is the line of thinking,
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
the student is thinking. So I know my topic that I proposed was very futuristic and maybe I would have done my PhD in 10 years if I went with it.
Yeah.
But I think they see, okay, she has a topic, she has a method, she has a technique, and she is interested, and maybe she's very excited about it. So
Yeah.
that's what they judge. And actually, when I go there, you see the facility, you see what is the technique available, what are the materials available, how will you do your PhD in the given circumstance, and then you decide your actual topic. But the topic that you write is actually to show what you are, not what your PhD will be. So that is the
That's right.
difference.
And that's a very important thing for anyone who is applying to have that in mind because many a time
Yes.
even like it was a similar story for me, right? Like I proposed something and obviously depending on what and it's also important like what current projects they are working on because it's
Yes.
easier because then they can arrange from the same time and same effort they can arrange more resources for you if they have a live
Yes.
project going on in the same discipline. So it's also important from those perspective. So that's a really really to the point answer. And then I think I have asked this before already. Like, are research papers absolutely important? Like, suppose if someone has just completed their masters, but they are either their research papers are in pipeline to get published, or even if they don't have one, like, is research paper an absolute must?
So I would say this answer not only from my personal experience, but
Mhm.
also with my peers. Because when I joined in Tokyo, I had 9 other students with me. So we were 10 people going from India to Tokyo. So I had an experience with a research lab, but others were from universities or IITs. And there it's not so common to have a research paper during your master's, which was completely okay. They learned that process during their PhD. So I would say research papers are not essential, but having a research paper, oh, that makes the journey really, really easier. So if you have an opportunity, grab it at masters, even be a co-author at someone's paper, try to help your seniors or do something about it. But having a research paper really adds into it. It will add to your comfort basically. But even if you don't have it, you have a very strong proposal, you have a very strong way of approaching the professor, then I think it doesn't matter. Because I know people who had no research experience but they have done their PhD very nicely.
And then talking about the SOPs or the statement of purpose, so I think we have again touched upon it in bits and pieces. But then, is it? I mean, like, how much time do you spend in writing one single research proposal? So, suppose if you are, as you mentioned, you applied to UCLA and to University of Tokyo, so you only need like maybe two SOPs, right? But then for someone who is, like not yet sure which university they want to go, and they might be applying to 10 of different universities. So, how much research should go into defining one's statement of purpose? And like it's obviously like one size will not fit all. So suppose if you're doing something in Japan, the same SOP you cannot put it for application in the US or the UK, right? So how much effort should actually someone put in their SOPs?
I'll give a very small example. There was a
Yeah.
misunderstanding. I had a friend and he wrote a proposal that I'll want to do this research, and I find your research lab to be very, very exciting, and it aligns with my thing, all those things. And he just filled in the blank with the professor's name and the research group name, and he applied to various universities. That is what people do when you don't get replies with the first like you have to do the fishing, you have to cast the net
Yeah.
quite wide, and you have to put on, and after a point of time, if it's a similar topic, the mail seems similar. So
Yeah.
so what he did was he applied in one group at three professors, and they were having maybe tea, and they discovered, oh, so you had a mail from that student, oh, me too. and and they had a laugh about it. Oh, he wrote that I am the best in my like area, and he said, oh, I also got the same mail. So this is what happens. So you have to avoid this. So you have to make it personalized. And I
Yeah.
would say the number of professors you apply to should be kept at a minimum. And once you get a negative reply from the professor, then you can go ahead with another professor in the same team. And maybe better to mention it to the first professor also. So, but I know about this incident, and it becomes very, very funny to look at. But at that point of time, it was very embarrassing for the professor as well as the student.
Right.
So that I would say is you have to keep your purpose, like the SOP, very, very personalized. You have to write it.
Exactly. So that brings to my next question. With generative AI and ChatGPT, which I'm sure like it wasn't available at your time when you started your PhD, or
Yeah.
it wasn't available when I started, but now it's taking the world by storm, right? So you can obviously get like very flowery and very interesting SOPs generated through generative AI or ChatGPT. So would you suggest people to opt for it, like take help from a generative AI or ChatGPT kind of sources, or should they refrain from it or maybe use it to a minimum?
I would not use the word refrain, because you are a researcher. You have to move on with time. And if there is AI, it's a tool. You have to
Yeah,
use it. So I would not say refrain from it, but let it not dictate your style. So you give it the input, and maybe it can frame a sentence, or you can check for grammatical error, especially coming from India. If you're applying for purely English speaking countries, especially US and UK, you have much more experience with that. So language is a very big thing. And even people who have a PhD in, let's say, biochemistry, they're very particular about the language in which it is written, because your communication skills are also very important, so that you can take the help of an AI tool and everything. So that is okay, but not ask it to write a proposal for you, because at the end where the proposals are read, like you give it, but when it is being read, maybe they also have tools how to differentiate between
understand. Yeah,
actually written proposal and AI generated. So it's very easy at their end also to recognize it. And mind you, they are like a very experienced team. Their work is to filter out things they don't want. And they also use AI for that. So it's very easy. So I would say not refrain from using it, but use it as a tool, not as your writing companion or something.
that's again an important point, because many times people may just put in some actual prompts, like, okay, I'm doing
Yes.
an aerospace composites, build me a essay in 300 words or something, right? And then obviously ChatGPT will do the work, right? But obviously you should optimize maybe like tailor it a little, but not like fully depend on it. So that's a very
Yes.
important point. And then, like in many universities, especially as in say UK also, like there is a doctoral advisory committee, and it can have different names, right? So, which is like in addition to your supervisor or co-supervisor, if you have one, right? So, what do you think is actually like is the role of a doctoral advisory committee actually very important in your PhD journey, or is your supervisor or mentor sufficient to help you with the entire process?
I would answer this question in reverse because I am on the doctoral advisory committee for a few students. So
Okay.
I don't know how helpful I am for the students because we only meet during those half yearly meetings. But I would say in my own process, I had a doctoral advisory committee. It was named exactly that. And it really helps only during your defense like presentations, because during my PhD, I had to approach them individually and explain my research so that on the final defense day, it's not something new to them. So, the advisory committee is something to help the student. So, it's not something to judge them because PhD is a journey that needs a lot of mentors. So, they are here to help you. And if you have prior connection with them, if you discuss with them once every 6 months, it makes the process easier for you as well as for them because they are also following your research. So on the main day, on the D day, when you make your presentation, when you show your thesis, they know the journey. Yeah, she tried this, she tried that, and now she got this. So it becomes very comfortable. So I would say, apart from the supervisor, doctoral advisory committee, and if you keep them in a feedback loop, it really helps you. So it is for the benefit of the student.
It helps you enrich more and gain more insights or depth, and maybe
Yes.
give you a bit more structure in your overall PhD program, right?
Yes, and especially on the final defense, you won't have any questions that are bombarded on you and you get nervous or something like that. You know what to expect from them. Yes.
So is it in Japan, like is it only your doctoral advisory committee that examines your PhD, or is it like some external people as well that you present your PhD to?
I also had externals, but doctoral advisory committee is was there in my intermittent defense, like the mid
Yeah,
defense, the
every
pre-defense.
year.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, so that really helps.
Okay. Nice. And then, as you mentioned about this MEXT scholarship, are you aware of any other scholarship that are available to Indian students who want to study in Japan?
During my course, MEXT significantly reduced the number of students it was taking. So I got my experience and I saw many juniors and people coming over. They had different fellowships. There is something called JSPS Fellowship, Japanese Society for Promotion of Science, that encourages people to come in. They have their sister universities, like UTokyo has a sister university in India. It is IIT Hyderabad. So there they have a JSPS center. They help the students to do higher education or a semester abroad, something like that, with UTokyo. So JSPS provides a university fellowship, and we also had something called university fellowship. Like you come to the university, you go there and you show genuine cause that you might not be able to provide financially for the studies, and they give you many opportunities for fellowships. And the third one was something called a private foundations. There are various private foundations, and they are also linked with the administration of the university. So if you go there and you approach them and you write to them, they will guide you. There are many fellowships. They will really help you. But still, I know people who have come and paid for it, but that was like one or two students who could not get through the fellowship. But maybe that was because of the lack of knowledge, because there is no platform available that says, so these are the fellowships.
Okay. Okay, so this is an important
Yes.
point because so that's where like podcasts like this may help, because someone who
Yes.
has actually done the journey and they may be aware of several other things that are not means it's existent, but it's not very visual or like very available, like at mass or easily available or easily searchable. So that's important. And uh, if you can provide any link or anything related to these kind of studies, these kind of scholarships, especially maybe for University of Tokyo, or signpost people, so I can include those as a reference link, so that if someone is looking for studying at University of Tokyo, they may like use those links to provide to search for some scholarships. And then
Sure, I would
then
love to do that.
sure, so that will be helpful. And talking more about the overall. So suppose if someone is sitting in, say, Orissa, somewhere in Orissa, because you come from Orissa, right? And I have a very strong connection with Orissa because I did my undergraduate from Orissa. So suppose someone who is sitting in a small town, maybe in Orissa, maybe anywhere in India for that matters, because with the exposure now that they are getting through the internet, many people are aspiring to do their higher studies from abroad. So what would be your key message to them? Like how they can, because obviously since you have done it, I have done it, so anyone can do it for that matters, right? So it could be maybe a bit more structured approach. So what would be your message to them?
So, I would say one big thing is dream big, because I know when you are in a small school or a small university, or you're doing your BTech also, you don't get to see people doing PhD abroad everywhere. Yes, people do jobs abroad, but that is through on-site or something. But try to dream bigger than that. It's possible. There is no hurdles in it. And second thing I would say that really helped me personally is always to seek mentors, because when I was in my BTech or doing my training for my BTech, I was in NTPC, or when I was in my masters, I always seek out to people who have achieved big things in life. And I don't know, but it's in my personality. I try to idolize them. Okay, they have done this, this, this. I try to go through their journey. I try to read whatever they write or articles about them. So that kind of inspires me. So yeah, this is the journey. If you follow this path, then it's okay. I always apply maths. If 1 plus 1 is 2, then it's 2. There is no no other factor coming in, that what was their background, what was their exposure. I don't see that kind of thing. So I feel if I follow the same path, I do the same things, I publish 3 papers, I can get into this. I something like that. So I'm very calculative and logically inclined, I would say, in this aspect. So I seek mentors. I don't see, I know they say never meet your heroes, they have their negative side, but I always see that mentors, they have done this and this, so they have achieved their PhD, so this took this many years, so if I invest this, I will get this. So it is a very calculated logical thinking on my part. So even if you are in a small city, just seek mentors, look into inspiring journeys on social media. At that time we had YouTube, now there is Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, everything. So look for inspiring content, I would say. Look for people's journey. Most of the time it's honest and it's inspiring. And podcasts like this, especially for academics, it's a breakthrough, because I see podcasts for every other sector, but for academics, it is very, very limited. But with this tailored questions, so you look into this, you can have this at the comfort of your home at any city in the world. So just go for awe-inspiring content and you will be motivated for it. And dream big. Whatever your goal is, it is achievable 100% if you have the path defined and you put the logical calculations in it. So that would be my advice, that nothing is impossible. Just seek mentors, seek the correct path, and I think you can achieve it.
Amazing. A great piece of advice there. And when you are talking about seeking mentor, is it more about, so suppose if I idealize Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam a lot, right? And I read a lot of his books and his journey because it's so inspiring. But then obviously, like there are two ways I would say mentor. That's why I would like to understand what your concept of mentor is. One thing is where you can reach out to someone and then have a feedback on what you're doing and get their active mentorship. And something else is if you are reading through their biographies or autobiographies or their journey. So what kind of mentorship are you talking about?
I would say in the initial part of my journey, I had the first one where it was not a feedback loop. You just read about them, read about their journey. That was it. But in the final part, when I was in my master's, I could actually reach out to people who were doing PhD and I could ask them, because they in that way you can tailor your questions. So what is it I have to do for this? So this is my current position. What do you think I should improve so that I can achieve that? So that will give a feedback, and then it will be a much more active mentorship. So if that is there, that's amazing. But sometimes it's not possible.
Yeah, because many a time people are busy and they don't respond, or like they might be receiving a number of such requests, and many a times it may also happen that if you are reaching out to someone, they may think, okay, this is how they are approaching, but they might have a second line of thought, which is like, okay, maybe getting a good job or something. So maybe not everyone is
Yes.
responsive. So it's also important to learn from their journey just by reading it rather than actually interacting with them. Uh,
Point about this, there is something called a mentorship program, especially in the universities in Germany, that was very nice for me. So there what they do is they take a few students from their batch, they do a good interview, and they select the students who are actually passionate about seeking mentors, and then they talk about what kind of future they want. Suppose someone wants to be an academician, they will link them to a mentor who is an academician. Suppose
okay.
someone wants to be a CEO, they will link them to someone who is a CEO of a company. Then they have a 1 year mentorship program. You meet monthly and you talk to them, and they have different kinds of programs attached with this. So I think that is something really, really nice. And if that is the opportunity presents itself, I would say grab it and get yourself enrolled in such programs at your universities.
Are you aware of any such program happening in India or for Indian students who are looking for
I won't
something
know
abroad?
about, yeah, India. I have seen it in a couple of universities abroad, and in Germany, I've seen it in almost 4 to 5 universities. So I know this is very common thing in Germany, USA, and UK maybe, but not in India. But this is something we can, like, it will come up with time, because in
Yeah,
the past 5 years, India has come up with university programs that were quite unthinkable when we were there.
exactly. Yeah. Okay, great, great. Thank you so much, Santana, for answering all the questions and giving it a very structured approach, like 4 point, 3 point, 5 point bullet points. So it's like anyway easier for anyone to grasp. Thank you so much for your time today. And I hope that people will immensely benefit from your experience and will obviously dream big and look for getting, higher educations from many good universities, including University of Tokyo. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you. I'm glad to be a part of this.
Amazing. Thank you. Thanks for joining us. That's a wrap on Academic Adventures with Dr. Harshit Agrawal. Comment your thoughts and subscribe to my channel for more inspiring stories. Please share this podcast with your friends and fellow enthusiasts. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep growing.